I am so pleased to introduce to you today Madeline Rogers. She is a full-time faculty member here, and she is going to be our moderator for our panel, so I will turn it over to her.
Thank you, Gwenda. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our AI and the Law panel event. This is going to be an exciting discussion today. Artificial intelligence is rapidly reshaping the legal work today, from research to drafting, litigation strategy, client communication, and marketing. Today, we'll explore what that means across different roles in the legal ecosystem. I'm Madeline Rogers, as Gwenda said. I'm an assistant professor here at Johnson County Community College, and I'll be moderating our discussion today. Let me introduce our panelists. We have the Honorable Rachel Pickering. She's a judge on the Kansas Court of Appeals. Awesome, love that. We have, there we go, give a round of applause. We have Joseph Cruz. He's a partner attorney at Shook, Hardy, and Bacon. Jason Puritan. He's the founder and a vocational consultant of Puritan Analytics. And joining us online today, Rose Moran, the Chief Revenue Officer at ICVM Hawk. I'd like to start by grounding this in your day-to-day work. In your current role, how are you seeing AI show up, whether directly or indirectly? And this is to anyone on the panel. Feel free to jump in.
Testing. Can you hear me? Well, I have a unique perspective. I'm a patent attorney, Chicardi and Bacon, and so the inventions that I protect from our clients happen to be AI. Most of them large language model based image synthesis and image generation. So I get to see it from a client invention protection perspective, but I also use it. Contrary to what some people might think, some people think it's taboo when you talk about using these tools as a professional. No, we're encouraged to use them, especially if our clients are AI-based clients. They want us to use their tools, right? Hello. Yes. So, yeah, I got to see it. Probably 98% of my time is in AI, whether I'm using it or talking to clients about protecting their inventions.
Well, I'm Jason Puritan. I'm an expert witness, and I testify in matters involving questions of employability, wages, and earning capacity in injuries and disabilities. And in our field, we're typically seeing AI as a supporting role right now in terms of efficiency of processes. We're seeing it in the use of organizing documents, organizing files, summarizing files, and those types of things. It's in our field, we just recently established a guideline for the ethical use of AI, and it specifically and expressly states that it is not to be used for decision making or creating any type of decisions or any type of conclusions for the professional. So right now we really just are using it predominantly in a supporting role.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me speak. Judge Rachel Pickering, Kansas Court of Appeals. So we're seeing it in briefs that are filed with our court, sometimes good, sometimes bad. We'll talk about that later. We're also seeing it in software that we can use. So if you want to review your opinion before you can send it out, you could use certain software to pick up on grammar or corrections. We're also seeing it in legal research, both with LexisNexis and Thomson Reuters have it with their Westlaw. But if you really want to see it in action, go down to the Kansas City downtown courthouse, and there's a kiosk with an AI person, and you can put in your case name, and it will show you where you go and what time your hearing is. So you could actually see it more firsthand if you're doing that. So if you're a person who's new to the courthouse, you don't know where to go, they are starting to use kiosks in courthouses to help people get to where they need to be.
Cool. That's really cool, Judge. We're seeing it, I'm Rose Moran, by the way, legal marketing. So everything we do, we're seeing AI start to be involved in. And so how people find and validate law firms and attorneys is changing. So they're going to AI, they're looking at the Gemini summary, they're going to ChatGPT to have an understanding of who you are, what your firm does. I think that's just a huge shift in buyer behavior and how people choose firms that they work with. We're also seeing it in-house with teams that are being asked by the attorneys to use AI to help them with work products. So not only are clients expecting it of the attorneys, but firms are starting to expect it of the administrative staff, not just on legal work product, but on work product that helps promote the firms. And how you do that ethically and you disclose that is evolving day to day, but it's so interesting to see what firms are doing internally and how we can help advise them.
Excellent. Thank you. And as you can tell, we have a diverse group here for our panel today. They're using it and seeing it in lots of different ways. AI raises big ethical questions as well, especially in a profession that is built upon trust. Who is ultimately responsible when AI gets something wrong?
I would say there is a case, you may have heard of this, Canadian Airlines. Somebody had to go to a funeral, and so they asked the AI chatbot, hey, do you give a discount for funeral airfare? And the AI said, yes, we do. The chatbot said that. And yes, we will, some sort of reimbursement. And then when the person went and sought their reimbursement, the airline said, well, no, you don't get a reimbursement. That was the chatbot that said that, not you. And what do you think the court came out and said who was responsible for? Who do you guys want to guess? Yeah, the airline. So that's a great example of if you're going to throw out a chatbot on your online, you will be responsible for what it tells your clients. That's just my personal opinion. Oh, can I do my disclaimer yet?
Please.
I am speaking for myself as an individual, and I do not represent any opinions by the court, Supreme Court, any district court, any magistrate out there. So if I don't do that disclaimer, I would hate to be quoted for leading you a different path. So thank you for letting me get my disclaimer in.
Thank you, Judge. And I'll assume that probably goes for most panelists here. They're speaking in their individual capacities today. So thank you.
I would say that the responsibility lies on the professional. So in my field, we always talk about, so what I do as an expert witness is I evaluate people who've been injured or disabled and go through a psychosocial evaluation, and I write a report and everything, and then I'll testify in court about it. But in my field, we always talk about being able to discuss and back up everything within the four corners of our report. So if it's in the report, irrespective of where it came from or how it was synthesized, all of that information in there. The end of the report has my name and all of my credentials and board certifications and everything listed on it. And so all of that is backed up by myself, and I'm ultimately responsible for everything that's in there. And so I have a duty to to be able to explain it and know where it all comes from.
And I just want to add, especially for you students out there, there's a case out there, you could probably quote it, I don't remember what the case is, but one of the attorneys, I believe, filed an appeal brief. They got sanctioned by the judge because one of the citations was incorrect. I want to throw this out there, and ultimately, obviously, the attorney was the one responsible for that, regardless of what the AI did. But I caution you, because in the technical field of large language models, I see this a lot. The clients are dealing with this a lot. It's called hallucination. That's when the model gives a seemingly accurate response, but it is not. It happens all the time. We are seeing a big problem right now with citations. For whatever reason, they're just having it's a big problem getting every single number. Maybe it's the parentheticals. I'm not sure. We're addressing that as tech companies right now. There's a bunch of inventions out there right now that are addressing it. But just so you know, when you use it, be very careful about your citations. Check them. because the models will hallucinate like crazy right now.
There is a story of a Colorado attorney along the same lines, and I might take this to where, I don't know if, next question. A Colorado attorney was in a rush. He told the client, I know how to do this motion. He had never done it before. He used ChatGPT on how to draft the motion. It was incorrect. He knew about it, did not tell the judge until later when it finally came through, and then he blamed the paralegal. Needless to say, the disciplinary, so this is the whole point of who do you blame? Do not blame, if you're the buck stops here kind of thing. So just be careful for those with a law license that you are truthful, but also you're not throwing somebody else under the bus because at the end of the day, it is your signature on that work that you're doing.
In your definition of hallucinate, do you mean not tell the truth?
Yeah, well,
Make up things?
yeah. So that's, if you know anything about like next sentence prediction, the way that these models predict characters, it's one word at a time. And so they're originally trained. We don't train them these days, but they're basically originally trained, and they're prompted to spit out words, or it's called a token, one word at a time, and in such a way that it makes sense, because they're very well versed in grammatical structures and syntax, things like that. So it sounds correct, but it's not. So it's, and there's slightly two different things, hallucination and just being incorrect. But hallucination would be like, it's telling a half-truth or something like that. It might get some right, and then the other half is wrong. So you got to be very careful, especially when it's ground truth things like, that's what I was going to get to earlier. It's not just citations, it's mathematical formulas. Anytime you do a search and you want it to quote something, it's really bad at that. What's funny is we have that technology. We know how to do a fuzzy search and search for a string and have it bring it back to us. That's already known, but a model can't do that very well. So anytime that you have some ground truth statement, whether it's your citations, mathematical formula, code, be very careful about coding. They hallucinate a lot right now.
Speaking of, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to
Go ahead,
say, in our field, I know that there are instances where people have written articles and things for journals, and as they're writing, they may ask AI to find citations or find research out within the universe of other peer-reviewed journals and things, and it will oftentimes just come up with wildly crazy things that have never been published, and quotes and things from papers that you can't find anywhere because they don't actually even exist. And so it was like, I've talked to a couple of colleagues who have seen these hallucinations, and they're like, yeah, it'll literally will come up with complete garbage that does not exist. But there are some specialized AI tools out there that excel at citation, like Cite AI for academic and for for if you need to write research and things like that, if you want to become published or something in your field. There are certain specialized tools that you can use that are better than others. But yeah, I mean, again, all the responsibility comes to the person whose name is on that, the authorship of that document, whether it's a professional or it's academic or whatever. AI holds no liability, and it has no responsibility.
Thank you. As we talk about hallucinations and inaccurate information, AI could lead to efficiency, and it is in some areas, but the legal field, as we all know, also demands accuracy, ethics, and accountability. Where do you draw the line between useful assistance and unacceptable risk when it comes to using these AI tools?
I would say, I would say that the line needs to be drawn near overconfidence and over-reliance. I think Joe had mentioned that the AI tools will oftentimes speak with significant confidence, and it'll be very polished and very professional sounding. I had a sales trainer at a sales job in high school that once told me that you can BS anyone if you use enough conviction. So you could get people to agree to and do anything and believe you if you say it with enough conviction. And sometimes AI, it sounds so crisp and polished and everything. It's like, well, that's got to be the truth, you know? And then maybe it's a hallucination or something. But over-reliance, I think, is probably one of our biggest risks. And of course, you know, over-reliance and then leading to just overconfidence.
The line I was going to say is your own knowledge in the area. So they've said to you're going to hear stories of courts drafting using AI to draft their orders, but that judge has drafted hundreds of orders beforehand. They know exactly what it should say, and they know how it should be presented. So it's used as a time efficiency. So one piece of advice is use it when you are an expert or you know what it should say, versus, I don't know, let's see what this. Let's draft an order in an area of law that I know nothing about. Well, what do you think is going to happen? Right? And you won't be able to pick up the fabrications because you don't know that it is wrong. But here's one thing to keep in mind. AI wants to, my theory is, AI wants to please you. That's my theory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It really is. Oh, look, here's a case that helps me. Isn't that nice? Versus those who practice in the law know sometimes you won't find a case right on point. And that's when you have to draw analogies. And that's when you're using your skill set to show the judge, there's not a case on point, but look at these other three. So that's just something to keep in mind. If it's too good to be true, it may be so.
Yeah, and we're also trying to solve that problem too, because how many times you get on ChatGPT and it sounds amazing, but it's not giving you the confidence interval. Every model has a confidence, right? I'm 90% confident that this is correct. I'm 80% confident, but they don't show it. We're trying to work that out right now. And when I say we, I'm talking about my clients. I happen to work with 2 of the 5 biggest AI companies in the world, and they are solving this issue because too many people are relying. And by the way, they can get sued. And when, I'm afraid, in some cases, when a model tells, I'm talking about the AI companies, if the model is giving you an answer without giving you a confidence, I think there's some room there for a suit. I think it's smart to be able to tell people when, how confident you are of the answer so that they can assess whether they want to do more research.
As a panel, you've discussed people relying on this technology. That seems to be a common theme. So let's go ahead and talk about the human side of this. And I'm going to start with you, Rose, online. How is AI changing the skills that legal professionals and other professionals like marketers need today?
I think, as the panel has already said, a lot of people are relying very heavily on it. And so I think we have a risk of diluting our critical thinking. And so I think making sure that you have a real understanding of what you do, how you do it is very important. Like we tell people, it's a great starting point, but it's not a great ending point, and it's never going to replace human creativity. And so I think if we think about productivity and what are the more manual inputs that AI can help with, that is a huge step forward for a lot of people, but it's being really thoughtful about what are those inputs that it can never replace, that we don't think that could ever be taken by, I'm gonna say a machine because that's what it is, for the legal profession, because there's a lot of creativity, there's a lot of value that goes into the work that's produced by everyone in the profession. And so being sure that that's protected and kind of given room to grow is really important from our perspective.
As a panel, you can continue on that question or even adding to that. Are there certain tasks that you feel will disappear, or maybe other tasks or skills that will become more valuable?
Well, I mean, critical thinking, as Rose just said, critical thinking is going to become more and more, it's going to become more crucial across the entire workforce, because really AI is going to take away a lot of the simple, mundane tasks of work and simplify it, make everything significantly more efficient. And then it's going to be the responsibility of the professionals in the room to bring the critical thinking to all of the models, irrespective of what business line you happen to be in or whatever area of the law you happen to be in, or in my case, if it's expert witness testimony, we're constantly reading research and evaluating methodologies and talking as professionals to continue to sharpen the critical mind and the eye, the human eye, and to be able to observe human behavior in our evaluation, so that we can deliver that type of analysis to the court. And so AI is making it significantly easier for us to get rid of some of the some of the busy work that occurs still in the office setting, but it can't replace, and we won't allow it, at least in our industry, we won't allow it to replace the critical mind of professionals.
Yeah, so to me, it's a sort of a long-term versus short-term issue. Now, pardon me, but I'm thinking more in terms of a patent attorney here, but I think we can apply it to other situations. So patent attorneys, we have to have a really good, solid foundation of technical knowledge, right? To be able to draft patent applications for our clients, we have to have a solid foundation of what the technology is. Now, let's combine that with where we are today with language models and other machine learning models. They do a good job, and again, we can have that issue of hallucination, right? In the short term, I will tell you this, we only hire people right now, patent attorneys, who can draft claims on their own without AI. And the reason that is now, again, this is short term, is because they do hallucinate so much that if you didn't know about the technical issues, right, and not everybody does, it takes time to really know the technical issues. And it does go back to what you were saying a little bit about, the attention to detail and making sure you get things right. If you were to just spit something out from a model, that would be very dangerous right now. I think 5 to 10 years from now, technical expertise will be a thing of the past. That's a very broad statement, but I'm willing to stand by it because I think we're solving that hallucination problem very fast right now. Long gone will be the days, I think, when you need somebody with a PhD, and I'm talking patent here, a PhD in biochemistry to write a patent application based on that. You might have somebody that's in engineering doing it, because I think the models will get to a point where they can do all the work, or most of it. I don't think there's an elimination. I know where this is probably getting to as well, but I don't think there'll be a total elimination of lawyers in that regard. But I do think these models are progressing so rapidly that there's a really short-term need of technical expertise now because the models just aren't good enough. But that's going to fade, I think.
There's the human element in all this. To get a copyright, you have to be a person. Yeah. To be a patent holder, to apply for that patent application, you have to be a person. So we're always going to have that element. To get your law license to sit for the bar, you can't go with your phone in. You're going to have to do it yourself. So to me, it's going to be always the human present in the law. As I told somebody, when your client is in trouble, who they're going to talk to? They're going to talk to you and not a chatbot. So there's always going to be that human element. But I really want to stress how important the critical thinking is. For those of you who are thinking about law school, eventually your critical thinking skills will help you develop as an attorney, as a paralegal. For those who are paralegal, your skills will help you as an attorney. So that is something that you will continue to develop. And you may have ChatGPT, an AI tool draft a motion for you, but you're going to need your critical thinking skills of thinking what is right with it or what else should we be asking from the judge. So I think there's always going to be that element. But I really, it's important to hear the fact that the AI tools are going to be so developed. So that's something to think about.
So speaking of the future and making sure that students have those critical thinking skills, speaking of the future and whether those technical skills are still a part of the practice, what do you think the profession looks like for each of you in, say, 5 to 10 years based on the influence of AI? I know it's a prediction. It's hard to tell. Things
Let's
are
not go
advancing
there.
quickly. But yeah, each person, 5 to 10 years, what's your prediction?
This is recorded, right?
It is.
Well, I'll just tell you. From a patent, I'm going to be very narrow here. I'm not going to talk about all lawyers. From a patent attorney perspective, I do think eventually you're going to start seeing more people go in-house. When I say in-house, working for the company as attorneys. Outside law firms are expensive. And if we can get to the point where I was talking about earlier, where the models are so sophisticated now that they do have this PhD level of knowledge that doesn't hallucinate, why are we spending so much money on these high-priced attorneys and outside law firms? And you gave a short term, right? 5 to 10 years. That may happen. 5 years is a stretch. I think we're going to begin to see that transition, at least for patent attorneys, in the next 10 years. Either outside attorneys might be pulling down their prices a little bit, or you're going to just start seeing more in-house attorneys to bring down the costs.
I would like to think that in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see extraordinary leaps in productivity, and hopefully timelines for things start to shorten significantly as well. Oftentimes in the field that I work, people will be tied up in litigation for years and years and years, trying to find resolution with their injury, their claim, or whatever. It also, I've testified in thousands of Social Security disability hearings across the country. That process as well, it takes forever, and I would like to think that that AI could help the field shorten some of these time continuums, because I mean, there's going to be a lot of things that we could hopefully replace with AI. Maybe not the critical analysis part, but some of the day-to-day filing of papers and things of this nature. The less skilled kind of work could be replaced, and those timelines could be shortened significantly.
I agree with both panelists. Our productivity is definitely going to be something that you're going to see from the courts as well. And so we'll have to, I think you're going to see more rules, though.
Mm-hmm.
Right now you have courts issuing orders. If you use AI, you need to let them know and put it in the order. But I think you're going to see a lot more rules in terms of, as an expert witness, was this report you're giving and submitting that the jury will see, was it AI generated? There's going to be rules such as that. So I think it's very fitting that the judge would say there's going to be more rules, but I think you're just going to see that we're going to ensure that there's some guardrails placed on things.
Rose, how do you see marketing changing in the next 5 to 10 years?
Marketing's already changed. I think there's an expectation that AI is being used now for productivity, especially for things that are content-based. We see legal marketing departments using AI really all day, every day. And we're seeing managing partners and CMOs of firms, I don't want to say mandating, because it feels like a very strong word, but they are. They're telling their teams, you have to incorporate AI in your workflow, especially at the larger law firms. But the mid-sized or smaller firms, they're definitely exploring it. But speed to market is becoming more and more important. So how quickly can you get content created? How quickly can you do a social post? How quickly can you update our website? Development has changed night and day, even in the past 6 months, about how websites are built to market law firms. But I think what is changing, and I spoke about it initially, is how firms show up and how people make decisions about what attorneys, what they want to work with, what law firms that they want to work with, based on the opinions that AI is putting out there about the firms when they're doing searches now, because so much information gathering about legal providers is being done online. Even if a referral is given, everyone, the first thing they do now is they look at that Gemini summary because studies show that for legal buyers, almost 80% of people don't click into the website anymore. They just look at what the summary says. And so making sure that you show up in a way that's representative of yourself and of your firm is going to become more and more important in the next 3, 5, 10 years.
You know, I'll dovetail into Rose's comment. Our firm, we have a team for website marketing, like what her firm does, but they just revamped our website so that in the past we've always worked on search engine optimization, and now we're working on a new platform called GEO, which is Generative Engine Optimization. And we've been getting calls from lawyers, and I always like to say, well, how did you find out about us? And I've had 2 conversations in the last 30 days where I say, ChatGPT recommended you. Because they're not doing a Google search anymore. They're not searching in Google, you know, vocational expert, life care planner in Chicago. They're in some type of an AI platform, whether, you know, it's ChatGPT or it's Claude or Grok or whatever, and they're working in that along all their tabs within that. And they open a new tab and say, I need an expert in Kansas City. I need an expert in Chicago. And I said, well, out of curiosity, did it recommend me solely or whatever? She said, no, it recommended 3 people, and you were one of the 3 people that it recommended. So we've had to have our team go in and completely update the way that searches are being done nowadays to be able to find businesses like ours.
Excellent. I appreciate all of the information that you have shared through some of these questions. I do want to open it up to our audience questions. I can come around the room with a microphone. If you don't have questions, I have a whole list of questions that students pre-submitted for today. Here up front, I see we have 3 hands, so I'll go down the aisle here.
Yes, I'm an educator here at Johnson County Community College, and as all of my colleagues, we are trying to instill critical thinking. But when our students graduate and they go to work for your companies, and if you're getting rid of what you're calling the busy work, as in most industries are, how do you think that they're going to be able to become very good lawyers, like you did? You went up through that ranks.
Hello. Okay. In my case, you really just, when you start training as an attorney, you really have to start by backing off ChatGPT and everything else. Act like it didn't exist. I really think you have to take the training wheels off. And regardless of whether, for example, legal search is done by AI today, for example, we know that. And I think most law firms do encourage their new associates to act as if it was not there. That's the only way you're going to be able to develop the critical thinking skills that you need. And then what we do is we put them on a plan. We say, okay, you've gone this far. You can start using it this much. Like, it's very incremental. You know, it is kind of like taking off training wheels and, you know, slowly giving the baby, going from baby food to meat or something like that. You know what I mean? You really have to start off raw. So these students, I really hope you don't rely on it too much now. You need to know it, though. You need to know how to use it because the firms are going to use them. They're using them now. But you really have to start off without it, and then you'll work your way up.
Yeah, I'm on the advisory board for the paralegal program here at Johnson County Community College, and we had an interesting conversation about this at our last advisory board meeting about the use of AI tools and such in the classroom, and then what does it look like with hiring. And you know, I was saying that, you know, in interviewing people, we just went through interviewing rounds and hired someone here recently. You know, it's important. We interviewed a college student, and then we interviewed professionals, experienced professionals. And it was important that they understand how to use AI, and they need to know how to use Grammarly, and they need to know how to use all these things. I think it's important that you know, in terms of becoming a professional, at least in my field, you have to start out as a counselor, and so there's not going to be any other way to get to become a skilled counselor than to sit down one-on-one with people and evaluate them and help them work through their needs and wants in life. And so that's always going to be something that we have to do. In order for me to get to the point where I'm an expert witness, I've had to do thousands and thousands of hours of counseling with people, both as a student and as a grad student and as a professional in the field. But as far as like hiring people, we don't hire lawyers or paralegals really, but we do hire professionals, and we need them to know how to use the tools when they get there. We don't want them to have to learn once they get there. And so we do need them to be able to critically think, be able to look at problems from different perspectives, and have the confidence and the audacity to say, hey, this might be a solution, or this might work. Let's try this, or no, that won't work, because I've seen that happen in a different field, they need to have that type of confidence. But as far as the tools go, they need to know how to use the tools that are actually being used in business when they get out. And they need to be able to hit the ground running. But again, it's just in a supportive role.
So I completely agree with both panelists. It's there to enhance your skill level. So the AI tool may, because I'm at the appellate side, a trial has already happened, and the person who loses in the trial will file a brief with our court showing how the district court erred or what happened was wrong. The other side, the winning side, files their own brief in response saying everything was fine here, nothing to see, right? Then we set it for oral argument. We had oral arguments here in April of last year. So those attorneys may be able to use AI to generate possible questions for that oral argument. So there's a very positive. But they themselves can't have the AI answer the questions for them. So at the end of the day, just remember that as an attorneys, you will have to go argue your case to the judge. You will have to make a response to the patent office. You will have to present testimony at the courtroom. And so I would keep on at the back of your mind of enhancing because you already have that foundation set, which is why firms are starting off with the attorney, not learning too much about AI and solely developing it.
You know, I'll give a quick analogy that's not legal related to kind of put this into perspective. So before I was a counselor, I was a nurse. So I'm also an RN. And all through nursing school, we would do drug calculations by hand, right? And so sometimes you got to figure out how much to give somebody, and you've got to do these. You learn the basis of the calculation when you take chemistry before you go to nursing school, and then you learn the drug calcs in lab and everything, and you get good enough at them that you could just take a Sharpie pen and do it on the back of your rubber glove in, a patient's room. And it's interesting because when you go from school to working in a hospital, there may be a drug calculation that needs to be done. And I remember an instance where I was working with a preceptor, and I was like, oh, I'm great at drug calcs. Here, just give me I'll do it real quick. I'm like, no. Let the computer do it. This is a person, not a mannequin. And we don't want, we don't want any mistakes. Let the computer do the calculation. We don't, and that was the difference is that, in class and, in lab, you could do it by hand, and you can, if you make an error, you're not going to kill a mannequin. Unfortunately, we've got enough guardrails in the field of medical care that you try to eliminate all of those risks and everything. But still, we don't need to trust our ability to do the math appropriately in a crunch. We can just let the computer do it, and it's set up to get it right every time. And so we use that tool in an effort to maximize patient care.
I'll go ahead and take the next audience question. Advantage of sitting in the front row, right? Easy access here to questions.
Thank you. Probably for you, Your Honor. At the beginning of the seminar, you spoke about sanctions with the tool itself. Sanctions? Yes. So if an individual licensed attorney fails to cross-reference and properly disclose that the use of AI is prevalent in their case, does that constitute fraud, obstruction of justice, and perjury, and or is disbarment a possible sanction? Has that actually happened yet?
Well, let me talk about the case that that was referenced earlier, just a second earlier by Joe, and that might help. So the case is Matta versus Avianca. It came out of New York, where it really made national news of an attorney who submitted hallucinated fake cases in the opinion. And when the other side said, "There's fake; these cases don't exist. This is ChatGPT had just come out in November of 2022, so this is spring of 23. And the other side, these cases don't exist, and that attorney, instead of saying, I used ChatGPT because I didn't have Westlaw license or LexisNexis license, the attorney just kind of put his head in the sand. And then finally, when they have a show cause hearing by the district court judge, do they fess up? Yes, I actually used ChatGPT. So because the attorney failed to advise the courts what they had used, both him and the firm were sanctioned $5,000. Other cases where the attorney is not telling the court what's happening and refusing to tell the truth, their names are submitted to the disciplinary. So you talk about disbarment. That Colorado attorney I told you about, who was not truthful to the court and then blamed the paralegal, his license was suspended for a year. So in terms of sanctions, it's going from a range of court issuing orders saying, if you're going to use AI, you let us know, okay? It could be a warning. It could be, we will disregard your argument because you used fake cases. So that it could be a sanction. There is happening of sanctions. It could be, so far I've not seen a complete dismissal of the case, but there are also references of that attorney to the disciplinary panel. So it's a whole range of activities that are happening because instead of being truthful to the court, they're hiding the ball. I'm hopeful we've had enough examples happen that that's no longer the case and people will just come forward. Does that answer your question? It does. Okay.
As a follow-up, can the client then sue for malpractice?
I like it.
So what happened is there's a case presently out of Georgia where they have sued ChatGPT for unlawful practice of law. Okay? So, but I'm not going to, there's no way I'm going to make a public comment of whether there's malpractice.
Spoken like a judge, absolutely.
Potentially.
To get one more question in, I know we're getting close on time here. We'll wrap up around 12:50 or so. I'd like to ask each panelist to go ahead and answer this for me. What's one piece of advice you'd give to someone preparing for a legal career or other career, marketing or other, in an AI-driven world? One piece of advice you'd give.
I mean, I touched on it already pretty much, but just don't rely on it. Just critically think in everything that you do, regardless of whether you know that you're going to use AI in the next couple months or years. Don't get lazy. Really, please do not rely, especially what maybe what you've learned today, that they're not perfect. These models are not perfect yet. Notice I say yet. Yeah. So, it'll probably be a while. So, you really just act like it doesn't exist. Like I said earlier, you're gonna. I guarantee you, if it's not exactly the way my firm does it, there's going to be some form of that your first job where they're going to hire you on and expect you to think critically. Because they know as well that these models aren't perfect and they can hallucinate. And if you don't know any better, if you don't know your subject matter, you're in deep trouble.
So in law school, when they begin, they tell you, we're going to teach you to think like a lawyer. And throughout those 3 years, you don't get it, right? You're like, what? Until the end, and you take the bar, and then you realize, oh, they really did teach me to think like a lawyer. So my advice is, don't hide from the hard cases. Take trial practice, get uncomfortable, push yourself. By pushing yourself, you develop those critical thinking skills and embrace the skill level of the logic that you need to practice law.
I would say that you should become competent in the use of these tools. About every code of ethics out there, irrespective of what your profession is, your certification, license, or whatever you're operating under, the codes of ethics will usually always say something to the effect of, if you're going to use a tool, you need to be competent in the use of that tool. Okay? And so I would say that you need to be competent in the use of these tools because they're very powerful tools. And I think that what we're going to see is they are going to make the good lawyers even better. And they're going to make the good paralegals even better. They're going to make the vocational experts and expert witnesses even better. But the bad ones are going to make bigger mistakes faster. And it can be super dangerous in the wrong hands. So I would say get competent in these tools and continue to polish up and continue to gain professional knowledge and become very good at mastering what it is that you do, but also learn the tools so you can hit the ground running.
Rose?
I would say be curious. Be curious about the answers that it gives you, about what tools are available. Don't settle for face value. Always take an extra step and look to see what's available to you to help you continue to grow and learn and to challenge what AI has told you is the answer.
Thank you to our panelists for sharing your insights today. Thank you for all of you for being here. We hope that this conversation gave you a clearer picture of both the opportunities and the responsibilities that come with AI in the legal field and other professions. I'll hand it over to Gwenda.